The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Welcome to Well Informed. Well Informed by Think Smarts is an affiliate of the Retirement Education Resource Center of North America. The Retirement Education Resource Center of North America is intended to be an educational awareness organization. We do not advise, market, or refer services to anyone. The content and discussions presented in the program is based on information purposes only and is not to be replaced, used, or misconstrued as professional advice. Please consult your advisor for information pertaining to the personal individual situation. Today we're with Jack Wang. He's got a great background, so let's just go through your background for a second. Jack is a college financial advisor and works with families throughout the U.S. answering two major questions about paying for college. One, how to maximize aid even if you're too rich, and how to pay without wrecking your finances. He has been quoted in Forbes, U.S. News and World Report, Yahoo Finance, CBS News, Business Insider, Go Bank, Rates, among other publications. He's also a regular guest on various personal finance podcasts and has written articles and has spoken in large organizations throughout, such as the Boston Bar Association and the Society of Enrolled Agents and so forth. So he's here today, and welcome.
Mark, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Great to have you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to be here. And this is such a confusing and stressful topic for everyone. So I'm always happy to share the message and get it out and help people and just clarify a lot of confusion.
So where do we start?
Where do we start? Besides just a hope and a prayer, right? Like, but besides that, right?
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, it's that or go buy lottery tickets. We usually one or the other.
Yeah.
But no, it is it's such a major decision, right? When your kids are getting high school age and getting closer to college and figuring out how to pay for it, and the stress of figuring out where should they go, what's the right school so that you set your kid up for success, and obviously how to pay for it while balancing other needs such as saving for retirement or taking a vacation or buying a second home or an RV or whatever it is, right? Or even just thinking about, like have enough money to pay for groceries that week, right? It runs the gamut, but it's such a stressful decision because what happens is the time frame for planning can be long, but then the activity itself of applying for colleges and applying for financial aid, it's such a compressed time frame that it just, ramps up the stress. And then on top of that, of course, especially girls, they need to go find their prom dresses. And now you have to figure out what to do for graduation parties and stuff. It's just a lot of things hitting all at once.
So when should a family start planning for college or thinking about the college costs?
Excuse me. So obviously, the ideal, of course, is like the day that your kid's born, right? But the reality is that never happens. And I can tell you, when my kids were first born, the last thing I was thinking about was college, because I was up to my eyeballs in diapers and trying to figure out baby formula and getting enough sleep. So that's not really it. The unfortunate situation is that if you look at the typical college planning timeline and what kids and parents hear from the internet, from their guidance counselors, is it typically gets in gear around the second half of junior year of high school. That's when people are starting to talk about, taking standardized tests like SATs or ACTs, visiting colleges, and now starting to think about, who should I ask for letters of recommendation? But the financial part actually starts earlier. And this is based on how the financial aid forms look at tax returns. And so we'll use an example. So let's suppose that your high school student is graduating in 2024, they're going to go to college in the fall of 2024. Let's work backwards. Well, if they're going to go to college in fall of 2024, when would they have filled out the financial aid form? And that would have been typically fall or winter of 2023, using the most recently completed tax return at that time, which would have been the tax return from 2022. So we have what's called a prior year, right? So fall of 24 is really based on 2022. Right. But then if you think about, well, what grade was my kid in calendar year 2022, using that example? And it is the spring of sophomore year of high school through that summer into the fall of junior year. Now, if you think about that for a moment and think about what I said earlier, and when college planning really gets rolling, college planning, according to guidance counselors, really gets rolling spring of junior year, right? The second half of junior year. But they should have been thinking about the financial part an entire year earlier. But a lot of people don't think about that. And of course, it's not guidance counselors' jobs. Well, they'll say it's not their job to figure out your finances, so they don't talk about it. So a lot of people will, not that they won't miss the window, it's not that, but they really need to start thinking about it a year sooner than the high school tells them so they can start planning properly.
I remember that oh so well.
Yeah.
Having 3 children that went through college. And I remember suddenly in the 90s, colleges went from being very academic to academic resorts. And the cost of college just exploded.
Yeah.
And I remember one parent saying to me that her son was going to a college. It was more like a resort than a college. And it became very competitive between colleges to keep up with the amenities.
Yep.
So I remember that, and I'm saying, how do we keep up with that style of education and financing it? So that was an interesting time. But now it seems like it's all kind of leveled off.
Well, I will say just quickly about amenities. So that is a big part of the college experience, which was really not part of college, certainly when I went, probably when you went. But today, colleges have rock walls and pools that not just pools in the gym, but pools where students can just lounge around if they need a break. A very well-known, actually many colleges have lazy rivers, including one college down south that has a lazy river that traces out the initials of that college.
Can I go there?
Yeah, I know. I would like to go there, right? Like if my studies would have been a lot better if I could just lazy river this whole time.
Yeah.
There's another college I visited a couple years ago that has not one, but 2 separate locations of a very popular chicken fast food franchise, right? You talk about fine dining. I mean, it's fast food, but I'm a big fan of this place. And so they had 2 locations on there. So the amenities now for kids is head and shoulders different than what it was for us.
Yeah.
Right. Now it is, a lot of colleges are like little mini resorts.
And I remember going to UMass Amherst, and the cafeteria was just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And they were known as being one of the best cafeterias around in universities.
Yep.
So those are the nice things that our kids get to experience. And that's a wonderful thing. I don't want to, I want them to have a great experience going to college because I want to keep them in college, which they were. And actually one of my sons was upset because he was graduating too soon.
Right.
So it's a great experience. So back to financing. So anyway, so you feel that people should start out as soon as possible upon birth. And honestly, I think a lot of grandparents are grabbing hold of that because I'm starting to see that not only in my personal life, but I'm seeing it professionally too, where grandparents are saying, oh, I want to take the burden of college education off my son or daughters on my children's plate and help them out a little bit.
Right.
As a matter of fact, I got a call yesterday. The client wanted to talk about how she's going to help finance her grandson's education, which is a wonderful thing, which is a great tool. So a lot of them create 529s. And tell us, how does a 529 fit into a college planning situation?
So let me just backtrack just for
Sure.
a brief moment. So there's a difference between sort of when your kid's born and just putting money away in a 529. I'll get to that in just one moment. And then versus the what happens when you start in high school, right? So as students get into high school, freshman, sophomore year, and we talked about where it starts really a year earlier than guidance counselors really talk about. Once kids get into high school, that's what's called late stage plan. And that really gets into nuts and bolts of the financial aid formula, what counts, what doesn't count, when does it count, how do different schools handle aid, things like that, all things that I talk to families about. But specifically regarding your question, so 529.
So, excuse me, let's define a 529 because some people out there may not understand what a 529 is.
So a 529 is a college savings account. And so the reason, by the way, the reason it's called a 529 is because of the section of the Internal Revenue Code that created these accounts. There's actually two different versions of 529. One's more popular than the other. The original 529 were what's called 529 prepaid tuition accounts. And so what happened is families could put money in today, some amount of money or monthly or a lump sum that purchased, let's say, equal to 50% of the tuition at an in-state public school. And the guarantee was that no matter what the stock market did or the investments did or whatever, and no matter how the college costs changed, their account would always be equivalent to 50% of whatever the tuition was at that school at the time they needed it, right? So they essentially locked in the old tuition rate, at the time they opened the account. So those plans do exist, but they're not that popular these days. The far more popular plan are what's known as 529 savings accounts. And so 529 savings plans, I should say, are what people typically think of as people can save to them, right? Parents, grandparents, or whatever can save to them for the benefit of a child or a grandchild. That money is then typically invested in some range of investments. And whatever it grows to is whatever it grows to, hopefully, right? Obviously, whatever it grows to is whatever it grows to. And then you can withdraw that money to then pay for college, right? That's the simplest explanation.
And there's a tax advantage.
And there's a tax advantage, right? And so as long as you use it for college, what happens is the earnings that are inside the plan grow tax deferred, so you don't pay taxes as you're going along the way. And then as long as the money is withdrawn for what are called qualified expenses. And so qualified expenses would be things like tuition, mandatory fees, room and board costs, now called housing and food. You can use that money for off-campus rent if your kid lives off campus up to a certain limit. It can also be used for things like buying your kid a laptop for college. And even if your kid lives in an off-campus apartment and has to pay for their own internet service, you're actually allowed to use it for that. And obviously things like books, right? So there's a range of expenses that the money can be used for. And as long as the money is used for those type of things, then that withdrawal is tax-free. Now, if they had to pull out for other reasons, then they could end up owing taxes on the earnings portion, as well as potentially a 10% penalty for not an early withdrawal, but for an unqualified withdrawal. Now, grandparents can open these up, and oftentimes it's very beneficial for grandparents to coordinate with some estate planning because there's an annual what's called gift tax exclusion limit where one person can give to another up to a certain dollar amount per year without incurring gift tax. And so grandparents can gift that money into a grandchild's 529. And in fact, what you can do is what's called a 5-year forward. So you can gift up to 5 years worth of gifts all in a lump sum at one time without incurring any gift taxes. And that way, grandparents who have a little, extra, well, not a little extra money, but a lot of extra money who want to do that for the grandchildren can do that. And grandparent-owned 529s are actually very, very advantageous in the financial aid formulas. But it's a great way for grandparents to do kind of some estate planning while helping out their grandkids at the same time.
Well, not only that, this year, in 2024, the Secure Act 2.0 says that if you have anything left in your 529, you could advance that to the beneficiary, which would be the student, into a Roth.
Right.
But as we spoke before, it has some limitations.
Right. So Secure Act 2.0 is the new law signed into law recently, right? Whatever the date was. And it added a number of provisions that made 529s even more advantageous. One is, as you said, is that if you saved on behalf of a child or a grandchild, and in an ideal world, you didn't have to use it all, right? Because maybe they got a huge scholarship or a lot of financial aid, whatever the case may be. Good thing. So there was some money left over. Well, you can use that money, you can roll that into a Roth IRA for that child or grandchild. Now, there are several limitations, so it's not just sort of roll whatever you want. There are limitations in terms of how much you can roll over, how much you can do per year, and things like that. So it's not an unlimited provision, but it's nice because now if parents or grandparents are, let's say they saved in this, but they weren't sure maybe their child or grandchild was going to go to college, or instead of a traditional 4-year, they go to community college, or they go to a trade school and didn't use the money. Now it's not lost. So that was one of the provisions.
So before we go too much down the road, let's let the viewers know so that everybody's on the same path. What is a Roth? Tell us what a Roth is.
Okay. So Roth IRA is a type of retirement savings account for anybody who has what's called earned income. They have a job or something, or they're self-employed. A Roth IRA is simply a vehicle that allows people to save on an after-tax basis, meaning it's not a tax deduction on their tax return. It is not a tax deduction in their paycheck. They take the money that they've earned after they've had taxes withheld or after they've paid taxes on it, and allows them to save in this account up to an annual limit, right? The trade-off for saving it after tax is that as long as they meet certain conditions, they can then withdraw the money completely tax-free down the road, whether it's for retirement or other reasons, right? As opposed to a traditional IRA, which is a regular savings account that's been around a lot longer than a Roth. But a traditional IRA is typically saved in some sense with pre-tax money. So it gets more detailed than this, but for some people, you can contribute to a Roth IRA, take that contribution as a deduction on your tax return, right? And in both cases, the money grows tax deferred. In the Roth, you can pull it out tax-free. In the traditional IRA, when you pull it out, you then pay taxes on whatever it is you pull out. So Roth IRAs can also be very effective college savings vehicles as well, but you're just subject to some annual contribution limits that you don't have with the 529, right? But they're both effective vehicles that parents or children or grandparents can use. It just depends on exactly what they're trying to accomplish.
Now, I also hear a lot of times, and I'm in the life insurance field. So explain to us, how does a life insurance policy fit into all this?
Yep. So life insurance, of course, is important first and foremost from a death benefit standpoint, right? So God forbid, should something happen to the parent, then the family can be taken care of, right? And that's important because we want our families to be taken care of. You know, we love them. We may not always like them, but we do generally love them. So just from that standpoint, it's important. But beyond that, depending on the type of policy, some, the most common type of policy is term insurance, where you buy it, it's inexpensive, it lasts for a period of time. Should something happen to us, our family, our spouse, and our kids get taken care of, done. But other types of policies, such as permanent insurance policies, also build a cash value component. And the easiest way to describe cash value is that it's tax advantage like a Roth. So some people describe it as a savings account. Yeah, it's kind of like that. Some people describe it as like a supercharged Roth IRA. Yeah, it's kind of like that too. But it's another savings vehicle that allows families to use that money to pay for college. The one advantage of a life insurance policy, the cash value, is that generally you can borrow against the cash value, typically at very advantageous terms. And because you're borrowing against, not borrowing from, there's a difference, but borrowing against your own policy, there's generally no credit check. Because again, we don't know what life's gonna throw at us. So at the time if you need to borrow for your kid's college, there's no guarantee you know what your credit score is going to be. You know, whether you're working or not, you might have lost your job. You have no idea what the interest rate's going to be, right? So a lot of these factors can be out of your control, but when you borrow against life insurance, none of those factors really matter. So it can be another great source of savings. One thing that people should think about with regard to life insurance. So oftentimes when families come to me and they'll say, you know, grandma and grandpa are willing to chip in for little Johnny or little Sally's college. I say, okay, great. That's great. But my first question back to them is, what does that actually mean? Right? Because, for example, if let's say grandma and grandpa were going to chip in $10,000 a year, does that mean that $10,000 allows little Johnny or little Sally to not have to borrow themselves, right? Because grandma and grandpa are covered? Or does that mean that the parents might not have to borrow as much or shell out as much money because grandma and grandpa are covering a portion? Or does that mean that little Johnny and little Sally can go to a school that's a little bit more expensive because grandma and grandpa will cover the overage, right? That extra $10,000 or whatever per year. So a lot of families don't think about that. But then they don't also think about, well, what does that mean? Because when paying for college from anybody, it can mean that you have the money saved ahead of time. It can mean that you're paying for college as you go. Or it could mean paying for college afterwards. So if grandma and grandpa says, look, you know, I want to pay for $10,000 a year, right? Are they saving that up front when little Johnny and little Sally's younger? Or they just send that money directly to the college while the kid's there in college? Or alternatively, would grandma and grandpa like to create a legacy and perhaps that $10,000 goes to life insurance? Now, granted, grandma and, little Johnny or little Sally or their parents might have to borrow more, but then the life insurance pays off when grandma and grandpa pass away, and the death benefit can go to the kids to pay off the loans and leave a lot more money as well, right? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that one strategy is right over the other, but it's another way, it's another thing for parents and families and grandparents to think about. What do they actually mean when grandparents want to help for college? And that is a way to kind of use life insurance as well.
So what I've seen in the past and what I see now is a lot of people don't diversify their college portfolio. They focus on one thing and they go for it. Sort of like collecting money for your retirement. They focus on a 401k, a 403b, and they go for it. And then at the end, we know what happens. They end up paying more taxes in retirement than they paid during their working years. So as far as college planning and saving, it sounds like a 529 is not a bad idea. A life insurance isn't a bad idea. What other tools would you have in that college planning toolbox?
Yeah, so and diversification is great because what I tell my families is it gives you choices and flexibility.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about choices and flexibility. So 529s can be a great college savings tool, but they also have limitations on what you can use, right? So for example, I talked about how if little Johnny or little Sally doesn't end up going to college and you shoved every last penny you had into a 529 plan, well, a lot of that's now stuck, right? We talked about you can roll some of it to a Roth IRA, and that's true, but a large part is going to be stuck. Or little Johnny or little Sally decides to go to a trade school, which can be a great option. But if that trade school is not part of what we call the Title IV system or the federal student aid system, you can't use 529 money for that without incurring the taxes and penalties. So that money's kind of stuck. Or there's some parents who say, you know what, yeah, we want to pay for our kids' college, but it's just as important that this money maybe can help them with the down payment for a future home or help them buy a car or whatever, right? You need that flexibility. So having a diversified college savings portfolio, as you say, whether it's 529s, Roth IRAs, life insurance, can be really helpful. Even just saving in general, right? What as professionals we call non-qualified accounts, meaning just it's not inside a retirement account. It's just like if you just save generally in a brokerage account.
Right. So non-qualified money is money that you use for everyday living.
Everyday living,
you
right?
pay taxes on it, or you will pay taxes on it this coming season.
Yep.
And you're using it for your groceries, your vacations, your living bills, your car payments, your gas. That's what non-qualified money is.
Right, exactly. But having that also can give you choices, because now it opens up planning opportunities. It opens up that flexibility should you, if your kid, let's say, didn't go to college or maybe got a full ride to college, and now that money can go help your son or daughter with their down payment on the first house, right? Gives you a ton of flexibility. And there's a ton of planning strategies around it too. So there's really, having that flexibility is really worth more than just beyond sort of what does for financial aid, whatever. Because also, if you start saving early, and with the 18 years generally that you go, a lot of stuff can happen, right? Just stuff happens, right? And so if all your money's locked up in a 403b, a 401k, or whatever the case, or 529, and now something happened, you now need to replace the roof on your house, or all your cars break down at the same time, or something else happens, right? Yeah, you have the money saved, but now you're maybe to take it out to use for these things, you have to owe taxes and a penalty. Well, I don't know about you, Mark. I don't like paying the IRS any more than I have to, right? I'll pay my taxes. I don't want to give them a dime extra. So having that flexibility is really good. Now, I will just say this, and I hear this a lot. I hear from people, oh, we've saved all this money and now it's going to hurt us for financial aid, right? I hear that all the time. And I tell people, yes, it might hurt you a little bit for financial aid, but what you got in return is you have a lot more choices. Because whether you choose to save for college on 529, Roth IRA, or anything else, however you do it, right? That gives you choices. Because there's a lot of families out there where their only choice is to figure out what loan they're going to take because they have nothing else. And that might be easier from a choice standpoint, but that's not a better option.
No. So before we get into loans, what about a HELOC, a homeowner's line of credit?
So homeowners, home equity line of credit, it can be a great way to pay for college as well. If you have the equity in your home, and it's a choice. Generally speaking, they can be at relatively low interest rates. They're generally, the payments are interest only, so it's not as much of a burden on your family finances month to month. It's not always tax deductible anymore because the tax law changed on that, but they can be a really good option for families who have a lot of equity, who are willing to do that, who maybe don't want to go the regular student loan route because maybe they get a much better interest rate on their HELOC, home equity line of credit, as opposed to some other type of loan.
So we have 4 components. We have the 529, we have the life insurance, we have the HELOC, and we have the non-qualified.
And a Roth IRA.
And a Roth IRA. So we have 5 components of a nice, diversified college planning portfolio. Gives us flexibility.
Choices and flexibility. That's because what I often say to families is, look, and the same thing is true for retirement. Look, I can't predict what's going to happen. I can't predict if the market's going to be up or down, interest rates up or down, inflation up or down, taxes up or down. I just flat out don't know. Okay?
So, John,
but to have choices gives you a lot of flexibility to address those things.
So little Johnny and Sally go to school. Are they getting ready to go to school? It's their junior year, and you're playing the finance. You have this portfolio. You've done the right thing. You've got this portfolio sitting there. And you say, okay, interest rates, growth is going great in the market. I can actually borrow loans. I can take loans out against their education for less than my market growth. Should I take loans out for their education and let the growth continue and then pay it off later? How does that work?
Yeah, so a lot of people think about paying for college in a very binary sense, right? It's either this or that. So it's either you have the money saved or you have to borrow, right? But the reality is there's a lot of different strategies. And so there are times where it might make sense to intentionally borrow. And as a result of intentionally borrowing, right, even if you don't need to, right, even if you don't need to, you can sometimes intentionally borrow, because what it does is it allows your money to continue to grow. And there are financial aid timing considerations, so sometimes it makes even more sense. But the point is, look, loans are just another tool. A lot of times people say, oh, having debt's bad or having loans bad. Loans are just another tool in the tool chest, and they can help families bridge that time. Because remember, if you borrow for 4 years, yeah, there's interest and there might be payments. I get all that. But if your own money is growing at a greater rate, hopefully, then at the end of 4 years, you can then, depending on what type of accounts in, but you can then take that money and just simply pay off the loan. But now you've benefited from even more growth. So in some ways, you might, you pay for college, but you might come out ahead.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of people don't think about that. They just think, well, I don't want to borrow because I don't want to be in debt.
Right.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with that.
And
but financially, you might be better off doing something.
A lot of people,
else.
their mindset is, I saved this money for college, so that's what box it goes to.
Right.
And when you save for college and you've got to take it out of that box, you have to step back and look at your options and see what goes from there.
Right. And one thing you mentioned about Secure 2.0, so I want to get back to that. One other provision that was in there is that up to $10,000 of a 529 can be used to pay off student loans or college-related loans. It's a $10,000 lifetime limit per beneficiary. So it's not going to pay off all of the debt maybe, but that's also part of the strategy. And so we're talking about maybe intentionally borrowing. That's also part of it. Is like, that, hey, I'm going to grow this money, great. You have $10,000 of loans still at the end, use the 529 provision, pay off the $10,000, done.
Awesome. So we have a bunch of questions. I put this up on Facebook for 3 days, and I got a few questions out of it.
Good.
So let's have some fun. Okay. So one of the questions, what different types of aid are there for financial aid? What are the formulas that the colleges use? And when applying for admission, should I do early admission? Do I get more aid? And the best one I thought was curious was colleges with big endowments. Are they more generous with aid? So there you go.
All right, great questions. So let's talk about the first one, right? What types of aid are there? So there's what's called gift aid, which is grants and scholarships. Scholarships generally based on some sort of academic criteria, right? Grades, test scores, but it can be also based on major, it could be based on geography, gender, or a combination of all those things. So it's not always just about grades, but it's called gift aid because you get the scholarship, you don't have to pay it back. Grants are the same thing, except they tend to be based on a family's finances. So they tend to be based on the financial aid info and things like that. And so those kind of, both of those can vary by year. But the big thing is neither one of them needs to get paid back. The other type of aid is generally self-help. So self-help can be loans, either from the school itself, which does happen, or from other sources such as the federal government or a private lender. And then also work study is also in this category. And work study is the on-campus job. You don't have to work in the cafeteria, right? That's not, or go scrub toilets. That's not usually what the job is. But it could be like working in a research lab, as bookstore, whatever, right? Mm-hmm. So, but you earn money as you go, and you can use that to pay tuition. The reality is, most kids, when they have work study, the money that they earn, it goes towards like pizza on Friday night.
Of course,
right?
cash
but
flow.
At least they're not asking the parents for it, so it's okay. Right. So there's that. There are two different types of formulas that schools use. Generally speaking, you can tell by what kind of financial aid form the school requires. The vast majority of schools only require the FAFSA. So we call that FAFSA only school or a federal methodology school. The other formula, the schools use a CSS profile, which is a second form, or we call those CSS schools or profile schools generally. Here's the big difference. When it comes to the value of your house, right? So let's say you have a house with no mortgage, you have a bunch of equity. In the FAFSA world, the value of that house is a big fat zero. It doesn't count. In the CSS world, the value of your house counts, right? So if you have $1 million house with no mortgage, it looks like you just have $1 million sitting in the bank at a CSS school. There are other income things. So for example, like just very broadly, like if you save a lot in your 401k, In the FAFSA world, at your job, your FAFSA world, your income is lower because you've saved that money in the 401k. In the CSS world, your income doesn't really change because the thinking there is, hey, yes, you put a lot of money in the 401k, but you still earned it. And it was still your choice to put it in the 401k. So we're going to treat your income as if it includes all of that. So that's another major difference between the two formulas. So the bottom line is when you're applying to different types of schools with different formulas, you can get very different aid offers depending on what formulas they use.
So how do I know what school uses the FAFSA program, the CSS?
The best way to know for sure is actually if your son or daughter is interested in college, to go onto that college's website. It's typically like go under admissions, undergraduate admissions, and then like financial aid. And then usually within there is a link that says something like how to apply for aid, and it has the step-by-step instructions. And usually in there, it'll just say, we require the FAFSA or require the FAFSA and the CSS. And that's the absolute best way to tell.
Okay. Now on a FAFSA, one of the questions is, do you have cash value life insurance?
Yep.
How does that impact your options?
So on the FAFSA, so again, two formulas, two answers. On the FAFSA, cash value life insurance is a big fat zero. Doesn't count. It's completely invisible for financial aid. So for those families who think that they're going to qualify for aid, that of the 5 different ways to save for college, that can be one of the most effective. All right. But on the CSS, it's different. On the CSS, it does not ask about cash value life insurance. So for the vast majority of CSS schools, cash value life insurance is also invisible. However, on the CSS form, colleges are then allowed to ask any and all supplemental questions that they want. And this can change by college and change year to year. So there are some schools in the past that have asked for separate disclosure about cash value life insurance. So some of these schools will ask, hey, do you have cash value life insurance? And how much is in the cash value? So that now is an asset that's no different, and it's treated no differently than if the money was just sitting in a bank. So for FAFSAs, it's always invisible. For CSS schools, you might have to report it. So it's not always as advantageous for those schools.
Wild.
Wild.
Really need to know your stuff.
Yeah, it's these little details, and they change all the time. And schools change formulas.
So here's some other questions. How many aid formulas are there? You just mentioned formulas. 2. The CSS and the FAFSA. And what counts or doesn't count in the aid formulas? We just covered that. And what time period do the formulas look at? We covered that earlier.
So it's the 2 years, for whatever year you're in college, right? Subtract 2 years, that's the income. Now, mind you, let me just clarify that a little bit. The aid formulas look at income and assets, okay? The income is from 2 years prior. The assets, however, are as of the day you fill out the form. All right, so that does create somewhat of a little timing mismatch. So I'm often asked that, well, how come income is from 2 years ago, but the assets are as of today? Well, that's the way the form works.
Well, I want to get my bonus the day after I fill out the FAFSA.
You want to get your $1 million bonus the day after you fill out the FAFSA, then it's all good.
Right, then you're good.
But the other thing, just to be clear, is that other debts, so if you have a lot of credit card debt, if you have a lot of car loans, if you have your own student debt, that's not counted. Right, that is not counted at all. So I have a lot of families like, don't they know that I have like a lot of credit card debt because we had to buy blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's like, yeah.
They don't care.
They don't care. They just do not care.
Don't. It's not their fault you have debt.
Right.
So here's one that we didn't touch on with the financial aid. Are colleges with big endowments more generous with aid?
So this is generally a myth, okay? They can be. And in fact, the colleges with the big endowments, you sometimes will hear them say like, oh, if a family makes below $100,000 a year or something, then we're going to give them more aid, or they're not going to have to worry about the cost of tuition, or, there's all these variations. So colleges with big endowments can be generous with more aid particularly for the low-income families. But that's not everybody. The reality is that colleges with the big endowments, they're really not that much more generous with aid for most families. In fact, actually, if you really look at how aid works, a lot of these colleges that have the big endowments, they tend to be the big names, right? The Ivy Leagues or the near Ivy Leagues, the names that everybody knows. Really, believe it or not, really how it works is the more kids they get to go there for full sticker price, the full pay, the almost the 90+ thousand that some of these colleges cost, the more kids that they get to go there paying full price, those full pay kids subsidize the kids who get aid, and the college actually has to not touch the endowment at all. So if you have all these kids showing up and paying full sticker price, then you can have some kids get aid and one pays for the other.
Nice.
That's actually how it works.
Nice. So scholarships and grants. We've covered the difference. How can my student get more scholarships?
Yep. So I get this question a lot, right? Especially when the bill's coming due, right? You're getting towards the end of your kid's senior year. You know that the bill's coming. So sweat's kind of flowing down. The vast majority of scholarship money comes from the colleges themselves, right? Upon admission. We call that institutional money or institutional scholarships. It's money from the college. Now, understand that it's their money, their rules. So colleges can say, well, your kid has to maintain a certain GPA to keep the scholarship, or they have to do this, that, the other to keep it. Fine. But it's their money, their rules. What parents are often asking is, are there what are called outside scholarships that my kid can apply for? And outside scholarships would be things from local foundations, the chambers of commerce, some companies offer them, things like that, right? And yes, they do exist, but I will tell you that your probability of getting those are pretty low. It's pretty much a numbers game. So it's not like, oh, my kid's just going to apply for this $125,000 scholarship from this foundation, get it, and then magically our bill goes away. It doesn't work like that. The stories that you hear of kids getting, like applying for outside scholarships to pay for all their entire college costs, that does happen. But what you're not hearing is that kid basically spent every waking day applying for as many scholarships. So they probably applied for millions of dollars worth of outside scholarships to get the $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $70,000 a year that they actually got to pay for college.
Well, in today's world of technology, isn't that a click of a button?
Oh, a lot of it is. A lot of it is, and can be really easy.
Copy and paste.
And a lot do require some short essays and stuff. There is some work involved. But can parents do it or can students do it? Absolutely. Yeah. But that should not be your paying for college plan.
Okay. How do schools determine who gets a merit scholarship? First, what's a merit scholarship?
So a merit scholarship is a scholarship. We call that, again, institutional money. Again, generally based on grades, test scores, things like that. But here's the secret. And there's actually a great analogy for this. For those of you watching who may follow professional football, you know that the NFL, every year they have a draft, right? Each team takes turns picking players out of college, and it goes generally 7 rounds. So there's 7 turns, if you will. And the players who are drafted in the first round, right, they're drafted into the NFL. So that's a great achievement, but they get a lot of money. But then when you get to the 7th round, those players are also drafted into the NFL. That is also a great achievement, but they get very little money. Merit scholarships literally work the same way, right, conceptually, in that when kids apply to college, a lot of guidance counselors and families and students think, well, if I'm applying, they're going to read my application. Yes, they are. But they're also evaluating you in comparison to every other kid who applied to that college or within that group of majors, right? So it might be engineering majors, okay? And the question then becomes, is at that school, are you a 1st round draft pick or are you a 7th round draft pick to that school? And then even in the NFL, right, positions matter. So if you don't need a quarterback, you don't draft a quarterback. You might draft one later, but you don't draft one in the first round if you don't need one. Well, colleges are always looking at majors. Oh, we need more of this major, but less of this because we're already full here. That also matters. So a lot of parents and students think, oh, it's just about grades and test scores. It's actually not. It's actually, how does the college view you in context with everybody else they're talking or considering? And if you're the first round draft pick, you get a lot of money. If you're a 7th round draft pick, you got into the college, you got accepted, but you get little to no money.
Mm-hmm. How does sports play into that? I use the NFL. So if the college football teams needs a new quarterback, does that mean that the school's looking to say, I need a new quarterback, so I'm going to?
Yeah, so there are athletic scholarships, and basically it's like that, right? Depends on the sport you play, how good you are, what the team needs, right? Quarterback or not quarterback or whatever the case may be. The thing to remember though about athletic scholarships, a couple things. Number one is you generally cannot stack athletic and academic scholarships, right? So if you're going to get recruited to play quarterback in college at the NCAA level, you generally have to pick one or the other, right? Athletic route, athletic money, or the academic money. Now, if you take the academic money, it doesn't mean you can't play, but you can't do both. You can't get both pots of money. The other thing also is that very few kids get full rides. Most NCAA athletic scholarships are what's called equivalencies. So what that means is the coach might have 12 full ride scholarships, but they have 24 kids on the team. So the coach could choose to give 12 full ride scholarships to 12 athletes and the other 12 just get nothing. Or they can do 24 half scholarships, right? Or any combination thereof. And so it's very rare that kids get full ride for athletics. It does happen, but it's very rare. So a lot of parents think, well, my kid's just going to play blah, blah, blah in college. They're going to get full ride and that's going to pay for college. Like, yeah, it doesn't work that way at all. No. Very rarely does it work that way.
Yeah, my daughter went on a scholarship for field hockey. And halfway through the year, she had so many concussions that she had to get out of that. Yep. So the scholarship stops.
Right. And in fact, a lot of coaches appreciate if their kids get the academic scholarship so that the coaches don't have to use an athletic college slot, right? Athletic scholarship slot, because now they can use it for somebody else that they might need who might not have the grades or whatever factors.
Right. So let's talk about, so it sounds like, there's so many options to finance, but what about that student that the parents are just down and out and they want to go to college and they have to borrow? That's the only choice. There's no grandparents that are chipping in. The parents don't have the wherewithal to do so, but they want to go to college. What do?
So unfortunately, not a lot of choices. And so one myth I really want to clear up, okay, because I hear this a lot. I hear the parents will say something like, we're willing to chip in X dollars per year, $10,000 a year, or up to the cost of an in-state college per year, whatever. And then if our son or daughter wants to go somewhere more expensive, they have to cover the difference, right? And that could be through scholarships, or oftentimes it means loans. Very logical, right? And I think it's important for students to have a stake in the game. Very logical, but completely unworkable in the real world. So students themselves can borrow directly from the federal government. No credit check, no cosigner, nothing needed, as long as they fill out the FAFSA. But the amount that they can borrow is very limited. So for example, during freshman year, students themselves can only borrow $5,500. And that's it. And after that, they're done, okay? Different in graduate school, but at the undergraduate level. So that means that if the family didn't save, and there's no grandparents that help chip in, and no aunts and uncles doing the same, and if that family needs to borrow another $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 per year, the student cannot do that. Period, stop, whatever, right? It is on the parents. So now the parents can borrow, maybe using home equity, maybe using what's called a Parent Plus loan or some other options. Or they can co-sign for their son or daughter. And that's fine too. But the thing about co-signing, and a lot of parents think this, well, if I co-sign for my kid, that's the kid's loan. Yes, but no, right? If that kid, for some reason, either doesn't get a job after graduation or something happens and they can't make the payments, as a cosigner, you're legally responsible, right? That bank is coming after you for money. So a lot of parents think, well, I'm gonna co-sign for my kids. There's that loan, and I don't have any responsibility. That could not be further from the truth. So
they'll get a job. I'll sign the loan over to them.
Right. Parents really need to think, if I need to borrow, they really need to think of it as their debt, right? Whether it's co-signed or whatever, it is the parent's debt. And that you hope one day you can turn it over to them if everything goes well. But that doesn't always happen, unfortunately. So that has obviously a number of implications down the road for retirement and things like that. But, it's on the parents. It is not on the kid.
So we're going to skip a couple. We're going to go to what happens to loans if tragedy strikes my child while in college or after college, co-signing or not co-signing?
So that's a great question. So here's the difference between federal loans and private loans. So if parents and students borrow directly from the federal government, which they can do, and parents, again, can also borrow directly from the federal government, if the student passes away either during college or after college, which obviously as a parent we never want, those loans are discharged, right? So the student's loans are discharged, but even any Parent Plus loans that the parents may have taken from the federal government, because the underlying students passed away, those Parent Plus loans are also discharged. However, in the case of co-signed private loans, if the student were to pass away, those loans are not discharged. The lender simply now looks to you as the co-signer to make payment, right? So a lot of times when parents take out private loans, that's actually a good scenario for the student to take out some life insurance on themselves, because God forbid if the student passes away, then the life insurance can then pay the parent to then pay off the loan.
Right, but we know at 18 years old, that's not going to happen. I'm not going to have a student that says to me, my parents just took out $100,000 so I can go to college. I want to get a $100,000 life insurance policy. If something happens to me, they can pay it back. They're not going to happen. So it's up to the parents.
It's up to the parents, right? And just explain to your kid, you're not doing this because you're trying to kill them.
And you know the kicker? So there's three things, and I'm going to jump in here because it's wild. There's three things that I tell parents that have children going off to school. Life insurance is one of them, especially if they're co-signing, regardless, because it's the least expensive way of not grieving every month. So, I mean, a typical life insurance policy for $100,000 on an 18-year-ld is it's $10, $15 a month.
Right, peanuts.
Right, yeah. So anyway, it's a simple thing. 10-year term, done. But the other two things that I like to instill in parents is the power of attorney. Because once the student turns 18, all information is shut off.
Right.
Medical information, legal information, bank information. So power of attorney in case that son or daughter, Johnny or Sally, has a problem and can't access, they need to access their bank account or the checking account, or they need to do something for them financially. They need a POA, power of attorney. The other one is a healthcare proxy. Right. So something happens on campus, they end up in a hospital, they need somebody to speak for them. Without the power of a healthcare proxy, they have no one. Right. So it's very difficult. And I've had situations where I had one tragedy, a client, a boating accident, and they were so happy to find that they had a life insurance policy. And it was something that was done way ahead of time. It was a child rider, and it was enough to pay off their debt. So that was huge. But those three things: power of attorney, healthcare proxy, and the life insurance policy, especially if they're co-signing.
And also at the college itself, there's what's called a FERPA form, which is a federal privacy form. Because colleges, again, same thing, right? They turn 18, they're adults, you can't access information. So as parents, you're used to all along going through elementary school, middle school, high school. You can get their grades, you can talk to the teachers if you need to, whatever. At college, none of that happens unless your kid signs the FERPA form. Colleges will always send you, the parents, the bill. They are not shy about that. But if you need to know your kid's grades or whatever, nothing unless your kid signs up for a form.
So one thing before, we've got 5 minutes left. One thing before we close this up, and this is huge. My nephew came to me one day and he says, Uncle Mark, he goes, I've got this student loan debt, and that becomes a social question when I'm dating, because they go out to coffee and they go, and I want to know, how much student loan debt does the person that I'm dating have? Because I don't want, if I get this relationship going, I don't want to be strapped down with that person's debt. So that's huge. The other thing I see, not only that's socially, but the other thing I see professionally, those that have large debt, they don't really stand up on their own professionally, because they're concerned that if they lose their job, how are they going to satisfy the anchor that's wrapped to their ankles, which is student loan debt. So, and this has been addressed in Congress, it's been addressed throughout the country politically and all this, but student loan debt is huge. So there are ways around it. So there are other people that say, well, I'm going to strap on the student loan debt, but for the first 2 years out of college or 3 years out of college, I'm going to live with mom and dad, and everything's going towards that student loan debt. What other things can we do?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's like an anchor, right? Strapped to them, and it can cause kids not to launch. Obviously, parent debt too. If the parents take on debt, right, it has implications there. So for the student, it's really understanding the different types of debt that they might have, right? Whether it's a private loan or a federal loan, there's a lot more choices. In federal loans, they can change repayment plans and things like that, which exist nowhere else. But also, they should think about whether or not, sort of what order to pay off the debt, like highest interest rate or whatever. But there is also a thinking also that it's, yes, you wanted to have that debt paid off, but maybe you set the payment as low as possible through either refinancing or through a payment plan adjustment. But instead of paying that loan off, they may want to save it, and they may actually build more wealth down the road, right? Obviously, they want to get rid of the debt, but it depends on kind of their own circumstances. The same thing for parents. So there are strategies to understand, if you understand the debt and know how to, know what the payment plan options are, you can structure the debt so that you can give yourself a little bit of breathing room, so you can still go get a coffee and maybe go on a date once in a while, something, while still paying off the debt. Sure. So it's not impossible, but you do have to take some action.
So we have 2 minutes left. What do you want to tell the audience?
The bottom line when it comes to college, right, and it's good that we're talking about debt, is that families, I encourage all families to think more about the front end to avoid the back end. As I tell families, you can either spend the time now doing the research, doing the homework, doing the planning, or it's just going to lead to you spending the money later, right? Spend time now or spend money later, because quite frankly, you want to do it right on the front end so that you don't have to worry about the back end and having the stranglehold of student debt on you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. It's been great. And I just want to tell the viewers, how can we get in touch with you?
Yeah, best way to get in touch with me, actually shoot me an email, Jack at Longhorn FIN. So Longhorn Financial, that's what it's short for, .com. So Jack at longhornfin.com.
Great, excellent. And we want to thank ECAT today for allowing us to do this interview.
Thank you very much.
And with we have a book, the Retirement Education Center has a book called Positioning for Retirement. With a $20 donation, we'll send you a physical copy. The donation goes to ECAT. A $10 donation to ECAT, you get a physical copy, or you're welcome to find it on the local author's shelf at the Ames Free Library right here in town, right around the corner. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope you found the interview helpful, and stay safe and stay well informed. Thank you.